The streets of Manhattan buzzed with anticipation on a crisp June evening in 2025, just hours after Zoran Mamdani's stunning upset in the New York City Democratic mayoral primary. A New York State representative known for his fiery rhetoric and radical platform, Mamdani had captured the city's attention with policies that promised to reshape its very foundation. No police, no prisons, legalized sex work, and safe drug injection sites. His victory sent shockwaves through the political establishment, and he wasted no time issuing a bold challenge via social media. J.D. Vance, you and your boss Trump are tearing this country apart. Debate me live if you're not too scared. The post went viral, racking up millions of views as the nation waited for a response. Vice President J.D. Vance, a figure known for his measured demeanor and sharp intellect, didn't hesitate. Within an hour, he replied with a calm, direct post. "Happy to, Zoran. Let's give the American people clarity." The debate was set within 24 hours, an unprecedented move that had networks scrambling to clear primetime slots. From CNN to Fox, every channel hyped the event as a clash of titans, radical reformer versus conservative stalwart. In homes, bars, and community centers across New York, screens flickered to life as millions tuned in, sensing a moment that could define the city's future. The Manhattan studio was a cauldron of tension as the debate began. The audience, a mix of voters, activists, and grieving families, sat on edge, their faces reflecting hope, anger, and uncertainty. Zoran Mamdani strode onto the stage like a prizefighter, his eyes blazing with conviction, fists clenched at his sides. His tailored suit and confident swagger signaled a man ready to dominate. J.D. Vance, by contrast, entered with quiet purpose, adjusting his microphone and offering a nod to the crowd. His unassuming presence, dark suit, steady gaze, belied the storm he was about to unleash. The moderator, a seasoned journalist with a reputation for fairness, opened with a brief introduction, but Mamdani didn't wait. Leaning into his microphone, he launched his attack. J.D. Vance, you're nothing but Trump's lapdog, peddling lies to prop up a failing regime. I'm here to end that tonight. The crowd gasped, a mix of cheers and boos rippling through the room. Mamdani's voice grew louder, his words sharp. You call yourself vice president, but you serve a man who thrives on division. I'm here to unite New York, to fix this broken city by dismantling its corrupt systems. He listed his agenda with unapologetic pride. No more NYPD, no more prisons, no more ICE raids, no more guns, no more cash bail. I'll legalize sex work, open safe drug sites, and give New Yorkers the freedom they deserve. The audience sat stunned, some nodding in approval, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Mamdani's vision was bold, even utopian, but it carried an edge that unnerved even his supporters. You're afraid of ideas, J.D., he taunted, pointing a finger, because real ideas threaten the tiny, fearful box you and Trump live in. Vance stood motionless, his face unreadable. He tilted his head slightly, as if waiting for a child to finish a tantrum. The moderator tried to intervene, but Mamdani waved him off, his voice rising to a crescendo. I'm here to liberate this city, to tear down the structures that oppress us. You can't handle that, can you? The crowd leaned forward, waiting for Vance's response. Vance leaned into his microphone, his voice low and steady, cutting through the tension like a blade. Zoran, I came here to debate ideas, not madness. You want to liberate this city by turning it into a playground for crime, chaos, and collapse. Tonight, I'll show America who you really are." The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. The audience, expecting a shouting match, was caught off guard by Vance's calm intensity. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a single sheet of paper, holding it up for the cameras. "This is a leaked internal memo from your campaign," he said, his tone measured but unrelenting. "It outlines plans to end all cooperation with ICE and immediately halt prison sentences, even for violent offenders." Gasps echoed through the studio. Mamdani's face twitched, his confidence faltering for the first time. Vance continued, his eyes locked on his opponent. "You talk about freedom. But what about the freedom of a mother walking her child home from school without fear of an addict waving a needle on the sidewalk? You don't want to lead New York. You want to dismantle it, brick by brick." Then came the moment that would define the night. Vance's voice dropped, each word deliberate. "You're not running to be mayor of New York. You're running to be the mayor of Mayhem." The crowd erupted. Some stood, some cheered, others sat in stunned silence. Social media exploded, the phrase "Mayor of Mayhem" trending within minutes. Mamdani tried to respond, but his words caught in his throat, his earlier bravado crumbling. Vance turned to the audience, his voice soft but commanding. "And tonight, I brought the receipts." The studio was frozen, the air thick with anticipation. Vance pulled another document from his folder, this one a set of highlighted bank records. "Your campaign accepted over $400,000 from foreign-linked PACs," he said, holding up the papers. "You called them solidarity contributions. But do New Yorkers know these funds came through shadow organizations based in Uganda, Qatar, and a firm flagged by DHS for ties to radical activities?" The audience gasped again, louder this time. Mamdani stood, his voice sharp with desperation. "This is slander! You're making this up!" Vance didn't flinch. "Then explain it, Zoran. Tell these people why your campaign finance records read like a criminal case file." The crowd leaned forward, waiting for Mamdani's response. He stammered, his hands gripping the podium. "The vice president is twisting facts. I believe in change, real change. Yes, I oppose the NYPD, but it's for justice, for freedom." His words, once fiery, now sounded hollow. The audience wasn't buying it. A man in the back row stood, his voice trembling with grief. "My daughter overdosed last year because of your safe injection site policy. She was 19. The room went silent, the weight of his loss palpable. Mamdani's eyes dropped to his notes, unable to meet the man's gaze. Vance stepped forward, his voice gentle. "Sir, I'm sorry for your loss. No family deserves that." The audience saw it then. Vance wasn't just a politician. He was a man who felt their pain, who carried their stories. Mamdani tried to regain control. "These are distractions," he said, his voice rising. "I'm here to destroy old systems, not debate them. The NYPD is a corrupt relic. We don't need prisons. We need understanding." The crowd didn't clap. A woman in the second row stood, clutching Lasky, a worn photograph. "My son Jamal was gunned down in the Bronx 2 years ago. His killer was out on bail under your no-punishment policy, Mr. Mamdani. What about justice?" Her voice cracked, tears streaming down her face. Mamdani froze. "I can't speak on individual cases," he muttered, his voice barely audible. Vance took the woman's hand gently, his eyes full of compassion. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. This should never have happened." He turned to Mamdani, his voice firm but not angry. "This is your legacy, Zoran. Not hope, not progress, but pain. You hide behind slogans while mothers bury their children. The audience felt the weight of his words, the reality of Mamdani's policies laid bare. Even some of his supporters looked down, the truth too heavy to ignore. The debate was no longer a clash of ideologies, it was a reckoning. Vance produced a sealed envelope, holding it up for the cameras. "This is a letter from a whistleblower inside your campaign," he said. "It outlines plans to redirect city funds to community justice coalitions, several of which have ties to extremist groups flagged by DHS. Mamdani jumped up, furious. "This is a setup, fabricated garbage." Vance stood his ground, his voice unwavering. "You said you wanted to run New York. I say you want to ruin it." Then came the line that would echo across the nation. "This city survived 9/11, hurricanes, blackouts, and pandemics, but it may not survive you." The audience gasped, then clapped, the sound growing into a wave. Mamdani's face was blank, his arms limp at his sides. Vance looked into the camera, his voice steady. "New York, vote with your heart. But more importantly, vote with your head." The stage felt like a courtroom, with reality itself judging Mamdani. A young woman, barely 20, stepped to a floor microphone. Her name was Tara, and her voice trembled as she spoke. "My brother was murdered last year, a 17-year-old with dreams. He died because someone who should have been in jail was let go under your no-cash bail law. You speak like you know my pain, but you don't." The audience wept openly. Mamdani opened his mouth, but no words came. Vance walked to Tara, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Tara, your brother mattered. His story matters, and your courage tonight won't be forgotten." Vance pulled a letter from his pocket, his voice soft but deliberate. "This is from Isabel, a former supporter of yours. Her niece, age 14, was trafficked by a gang running a safe sex work site, backed by your policy advisors. They called it liberation, but it was a nightmare." The room turned ice cold. Mamdani's voice cracked as he tried to respond. "You're using grief as a weapon." Vance's reply was calm but devastating. "No, Zoran, you used promises to fool people. I'm showing them the price of believing you." As the debate neared its end, audience members began to walk out on Mamdani, a father of two, a retired teacher, a single mother, clutching a crumpled flyer with his face. "He doesn't deserve our ears," one whispered. Even Mamdani's campaign team began to fracture, with an advisor frantically canceling post-debate appearances. Vance turned to Mamdani, his voice low and piercing. "You could have used your voice for good. You still can, but not like this." The words were not an attack, but a mirror, reflecting Mamdani's failures back at him. Outside, crowds gathered around TV screens in cafes, bars, and public plazas, tears streaming down their faces. A grandmother in Harlem wiped her cheek, whispering, "I haven't felt this scene in 20 years." In Staten Island, off-duty cops stood in silence, one muttering, "That's leadership. That's heart." Vance's closing words were simple but profound. "This isn't about titles, mayor, vice president. It's about responsibility. Protect your children, respect your laws, and never trade safety for slogans." The crowd erupted, not with noise, but with honest tears. Backstage, Mamdani sat alone in a dressing room, his jacket hanging limp off one shoulder. He scrolled through his phone, confronted by headlines. Zoran crushed by Vance. Mayor of Mayhem trends at 30 million views. His staff had vanished, the cheers that once greeted him replaced by silence. He looked into a mirror, and saw not a future mayor, but a man exposed, his ambitions unraveling. Vance, meanwhile, walked quietly through the studio halls with two aides. "That wasn't a debate," he said softly. "That was a funeral for failed ideas." His aide asked, "Are you okay?" Vance nodded, but his eyes were heavy with the stories he'd heard. The grieving mother, the murdered teen, the trafficked niece. He wasn't celebrating. He was carrying a burden. The debate's echoes lingered across New York City, a metropolis forever changed. In the Bronx, a small deli on Tremont Avenue hung a handwritten sign in its window. "We support J.D. Vance. We want peace." The words, scrawled in black marker, spoke for a neighborhood weary of violence and broken promises. In Queens, a middle school teacher named Maria Alvarez gathered her students in a circle, leading a quiet prayer for safety, for a city that wouldn't betray them again. "We need leaders who listen," she told her class, her voice trembling. "Last night, we saw one." At a community center in Harlem, former Mamdani supporters convened, their faces heavy with regret. A young activist, Jamal Carter, stood and admitted, "I voted for Zoran in the primary. His talk of justice, of tearing down systems, it sounded right. But I never asked what it would cost. His slogans blinded me." Others nodded, their faith in Mamdani's radical vision shaken by the stark realities Vance had laid bare. The room, once alive with chants for change, now buzzed with introspection. A leaked video spread like wildfire online, capturing Vance backstage after the debate. Head bowed, hands folded, he whispered a prayer for those who couldn't speak tonight, and those still suffering. Filmed by a cleaning staffer, the grainy clip showed a man unguarded, his eyes wet with emotion. By noon, it had 18 million views, with comments flooding in. "I didn't vote for Trump, but Vance is different," one read. "This isn't politics, it's humanity." The video wasn't staged or polished. It was raw, real, and resonated with a nation craving authenticity. The next morning, Zoran Mamdani faced a gauntlet of reporters at a press conference in Midtown. Pale and exhausted, his once confident demeanor was gone. "Last night was difficult," he said, clearing his throat, his voice thin. "But I stand by my vision. A radical rethinking of this city is necessary." There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the pain his policies had caused. The room was silent, cameras capturing his isolation. Watching on a small TV in a Brooklyn fire station, J.D. Vance shook his head. "He had one chance to show heart, and he blew it," he said. A firefighter, her hands still smudged from a recent call, muttered, "He doesn't care about us, about the streets." New York turned its back. Donations to Mamdani's campaign dried up. Allies vanished into the shadows, and his name became a cautionary tale. Don't pull a Mamdani. A handwritten letter arrived at Vance's hotel, slipped under the door with no return address. It was from a mother, Elena Rodriguez, whose son died of a fentanyl overdose, enabled by the safe injection sites Mamdani championed. "When you said, 'We failed you,' I broke," she wrote. "It was the first time someone in power didn't lie. My boy, Carlos, was 22. He wanted to be a chef. He would have trusted you. So do I." Vance read it alone in his room, his hands trembling as he folded it carefully, placing it beside Isabel's letter. "We won't fail the next one," he whispered, his voice barely audible but resolute. New York woke to a quieter, more reflective morning. In the Bronx, murals sprang up on brick walls, depicting Vance standing beside grieving families, his hand on a father's shoulder. In Brooklyn, candles lined the sidewalks outside St. Augustine's Church, a sign reading, "Thank you, J.D., for fighting for our children." Newsrooms were inundated with calls from single mothers, veterans, teachers, and janitors, all sharing stories of feeling seen for the first time in years. A retired NYPD officer, speaking on a local radio show, choked up, "I've patrolled these streets for 30 years. Vance spoke for every cop who's been spit on, every family we couldn't save." In a national address broadcast from a simple kitchen table, Vance spoke without a script, his plain shirt a stark contrast to the polished suits of politics. "This wasn't about a debate," he said, his voice steady but heavy. "It was about a city crying for help. The truth won." He paused, his eyes glistening. "If they try to take your voice, I'll be your echo." The line struck a chord, becoming a hashtag, a poster, a movement. Across the nation, people stood in their living rooms, tears streaming as they clapped for a man who had given them hope. Not through promises, but through action. Zoran Mamdani's story ended not with fireworks, but with silence. His radical vision, once a beacon for activists, was exposed as chaos, a dangerous experiment with lives he didn't understand. His name, once whispered with reverence in progressive circles, became a warning. J.D. Vance didn't celebrate or mock. He carried the weight of every letter, every voice, every life his words had touched. New York had been pulled back from the edge, but Vance knew the fight wasn't over. In a private moment, as he boarded a plane back to Washington, he whispered to an aide, "How many cities didn't get this chance?" His resolve was unbroken, his mission clear: to protect a nation teetering on the brink.